Okay, so today we're going to dig up some dahlia tubers so that we can overwinter them and plant them again next spring. We have waited for the first couple of frosts, enough to kill the top of the plant but not enough to freeze the soil. We want to do that because it helps harden off the tuber and encourages it to go into dormancy so that the likelihood of it overwintering well is increased. We have tubers that were planted in a raised bed and some that were planted in containers. In the containers, we can just tip them on their sides and pull the tubers out. We don't want to dig them if we don't have to, because then we don't risk damaging any of the tubers with a fork or a shovel. So we're going to just tip this over, bump the side a little bit to loosen it, gently pull our dahlias out, and then we're going to want to remove the soil around these. It's usually easiest if you clip off the tops and don't have to work around those. Clip them off with a couple of inches left to use as handles. Then we can take some of this soil out. You're really going to want to have all the soil removed because it can hold moisture next to your tubers and encourage the roots to rot when they're in storage. So these are the tubers we just pulled out of the pot, and we're going to take as much of the soil as we can off, just kind of brushing it off, and then we're going to wash them down with a hose to get the rest of that soil out. Before we get the hose out, let's take a couple of the tubers out that were planted in the raised beds. So you want to use a shovel or a fork and make a pretty good size circle around your plant, because sometimes it's surprising the size of the root ball that has developed during the course of a single season. You want to lift it and then break off some of the soil rather than just grabbing the stem and pulling, because you can tear it if you do that, and you want to avoid that. Dahlia roots come in different sizes and configurations. Some are little rounded roots, some are long and thin. It has a lot to do with the individual variety of dahlia, what the tubers look like. So, dig them out like that. This we can trim down a little bit, and you can see these are hollow. And if you think you've had a lot of rain and there may be moisture down in here after we get done washing these off, you want to dry them in this position so any moisture that's sitting in there drains out. Okay, so here we have some of the dahlia tubers that we dug out earlier, and they've been washed off and we've let them dry. And the next step is just to kind of look them over and figure out if there's anything dead or some of this little stringy stuff can come off. It kind of gets in the way as you're trying to tuck them away for the year, so that can go. If you have tubers that are loose, like this one, see the way it's kind of loose? You can take that off because that's not going to do anything for you, and you can just toss that away. Likewise, if you have any that have fallen off, you can usually toss them too. And here's why. Right here at the collar, where the tubers meet the stem, is where the eyes grow and develop for next year's plant. So you can see there's a little sprout there. That's a little eye. There's a little eye here. There's another one down here. And if you have just a loose tuber that doesn't have a piece of the collar with it, it will never grow without that eye. So you can just toss those. Here's an example of, we can cut this down, it's too long. I cut these down after a frost a couple of weeks ago and then didn't take them out of the garden as quickly as I should have. And we had warm weather. And the dahlias decided it was spring and it's time to grow again. So you can see we have little sprouts starting here. These are the eye area, and they're starting to grow. Those, you don't want to have those grow, you can just roll those off. But typically you don't have that developing, you just have like a little bud and you just leave that. So you want to cut these down so they're a few inches tall. See how that one has moisture in it? So you want to make sure that you let it dry for a couple of days, upside down like that so any moisture drains out. And then you want to make sure you also label them so that you can keep track of what varieties you have, and you can make sure that you plant the tall ones in the back and the shorter ones in the front. And again, you want to cut them all down. You may need something more substantial for this one. Cut them all down to a couple of inches, but that's a single year's growth, so you can see they get some pretty sizable stems on them. Okay, so we'll finish cleaning these up and then we'll pack them away for the season. Okay, we have dug our dahlia roots and now we need to pack them away for the winter. We have cleaned them off, they are dry, and we have taken an ordinary cardboard box, put a couple of layers of newspaper in there, and about an inch or an inch and a half of very slightly moist peat moss. And you're just going to tuck your dahlia roots in there, like that. These are 3 of the same variety, so I can just take my little name tag here so that I remember what I've got and tuck it in with them. And then I'm going to cover them with peat. And if I had 3 more of another variety, I could put a couple layers of newspaper, a little more peat moss, and lay them in. And then you're just going to lightly cover them. You want to have a little airflow in here. So we're going to close the box, but we're not going to stack things on top of it, and we are not going to seal it because we're going to come back and check on it. So monthly, you're going to come back and you're going to look inside and you're going to brush a little of the peat off. And in many cases, I just pull the whole tuber out. I take a look at it and I make sure that it's not shriveling up, which tells me there's not quite enough moisture in there, or it's not rotting, which tells me there's too much moisture. And either one of those things can be remedied if you catch it midstream. So you check once a month. If you see it shriveling up, you come back with a little spray bottle of water and lightly spray your peat moss. It doesn't need much. And then you tuck it back in. If it is starting to rot, like rot on an apple, you know, it'll take out the whole group if it's not removed. So you cut off whatever is rotted, put it back in, maybe leave it open for a day to let it dry a little bit, cover it back up, and then close it back up. It's a little bit of a balancing act. If you live in a dry part of the country, the odds of it drying out are greater, and that's what you're going to want to keep an eye on. If you live in a part of the country where there's a lot of moisture in the air, rot is more likely. But you just kind of keep an eye on it. Check it monthly, and then when February or March comes and you decide that maybe you want to pull them out and pot them up to get them started inside, you can pull your roots out at that point, or you can wait until April or May when it's warm enough for you to put them in the ground in your area. Lots of times those little eyes will have started to bud and developed little sprouts during that time period. That's fine. And those will grow into shoots, and occasionally when you're planting those, you'll knock one off. Don't worry about it. The plant will regrow another one. So you want to put this in a place that is dry, and you want to put it in a place where the temperature is between 40 and 50 degrees. Much below 40 and you risk having your tubers freeze, and above 50 they're going to want to sprout. So sometimes an unheated garage, a place in a dry basement, the back of a chilly unheated closet. You just have to walk around your house and figure out what will work for you, but you're looking for dry, dark, 40 to 50 degrees. And then go back and check them monthly and see if they need a little adjusting as far as the amount of moisture, and then you'll be ready come spring to start your dahlias again.